Thank you for joining us here for the Smite Console League. Finch, I'm joined by Taco, and hopefully you're joining us right after Esports Weekly. If not, make sure you check it out Mondays at 10. We have a whole lot of fun there talking about all kind of things Smite competitive.
Get a little bit of insight as to what the casters believe is going to happen in the matchups of the week, and a little bit of a recap also in the past events. But for right now, all the focus is between this set of European Powerhouses versus Fable GG.
That's right. We're taking a look at Europe Console League. In fact, let's go ahead and take a look at that schedule in general. That way you can see all the matchups that you can be expecting to happen. So again, we're looking at that Fable and European Powerhouses. Later on, there's going to be the Astral Armada, the Rival Revenge, and Elevate Flashpoint. So a lot of big sets are going to be happening. In fact, that Astral Armada set, the one's going to be after this one's a pretty big one too. But as you said, we're going into FableEU versus EU Powerhouses. Both these teams have had a kind of a rough split here in the summer split, so definitely try to see if they can gain some momentum and try and climb back up near the top of those standings.
The big thing is nobody wants to be the team that finishes last, and of course there's always that little bit of the pride aspect on the line. And for these two teams specifically, this isn't going to be an easy set between the two. I think the main issue that a lot of teams have when they're not at that #1 slot is just knowing how to close out a set.
That sometimes can be the issue when you're at the top. Is, you know, maybe you can get a couple of some early kills, some early objectives, get the early lead, but then when you get to that sieging phase, it's just not quite as clean as it needs to be. So that's going to be their job. Make sure they're able to be that clean, able to finish off these jobs here in the set if they want to be able to be the ones that get the victory.
And it won't always be easy, and that's the big thing to keep in mind, is that whether or not which side is going to end up coming out on top ultimately all depends on just who can figure it out first. And I think just going with what's comfortable for a team is generally going to be their best bet in these sort of matchups.
Well, it sounds like we are just about ready for picks and bans. We'll get those up here for you in just a minute. Now, I do want to point out, I mean, now that EU kind of might be the stronger region, at least for a moment. Rival did win, right? Though you got to think the quality of some of these matches, some of these games might be going up. Taco, I want to hear some of your thoughts on this.
It's just going to take a little bit of time still, I think, for that skill level that Rival has managed to attain over a long period of time before it starts to translate. Yes, they have definitely been grinding. I think that a lot of those players also on the Rival roster, I mean, initially, most of them didn't even get along, but they put their differences aside so they could form this powerhouse team over in Europe. No, pun intended, considering we are about to watch European Powerhouses play, but I think that the trickle-down effect is going to take some time still before Rival really starts before other teams start showing what it's like benefiting off of playing against Rival all the time and start translating that over into their own adaptations of play. And well, right now, I do think that the European scene as a whole has come together a little bit more, and they do seem to be stronger overall.
Definitely some strength there as we get a little bit of that trickle-down economics there from Taco. And Turnabog, no surprise, already being taken off the board. We kind of talked at length about how strong this god is, and certainly it's being acknowledged here within this set. So that does mean some of the stronger gods that typically get banned are able to kind of creep through. We're seeing Terra, Achilles, Janus all be first selected because you have to ban away these healers. You got to ban away the Turnabog.
Taking care of the healers, I mean, it's not a necessity. If you're Fable, they were in that second pick slot. They could have maybe even left open both Chang'e and Aphrodite. That way they could guarantee one of them, although probably the Chang'e a little bit more favorable in that regard. But European Powerhouses with the Terra, Athena, and Artemis, frontline solidified, perfect peel already in place for your Hunter. I really like what European Powerhouses is going for them, but Fable also still having the global presence, I think, to compensate for some of that early game pressure that European Powerhouses provides.
Well, European Powerhouses, I think, have the early global map rotation with the Athena, but I still think the early pressure might be in the way of Fable just from this Achilles. I mean, he's so good at ganking and bringing in high damage early on because he has the stun, because he has so much chase down. Fable might be able to cause some problems for European Powerhouse before these Guardians get online.
I think it depends on whether or not Fable actually decide to make this Achilles their jungle pick. I'm not entirely sold that this is going to be Achilles in the jungle. It could still possibly even be a support or solo Achilles here. I think that it's not that uncommon any longer to see Europe trying to run the Achilles support. We've seen a lot of it over on the PC side, at least for Europe. And Ratatoskr being locked away. Again, still a certain level of ambiguity, though, because we have seen some Rata solo before, as much as we've seen him in the jungle.
Well, this does make it seem like a little bit more towards Achilles solo in this case, but oddly enough, it would still be plenty of pressure in that same situation if it were Rat in the jungle, right? Because now they have the Janus and the Ratatoskr for that global presence, plus the Xbalanque Dark Knight's ultimate. It all kind of affects the whole map all at once and can really set up some early picks for Fable if they choose to go that route.
And that is one thing that I do really appreciate looking at Fable's current lineup. The Janus, I think, is a great attributing factor in terms of just having that rotational ability. You need a way to match the Athena, but that's just one person. Defender of Olympus only takes you to one other teammate.
Right.
That doesn't necessarily mean that European powerhouses are going to be set in stone and ready to go whenever Fable decide to initiate, and you can never really tell what's going to happen or who's coming through that through space and time next.
Well, there's going to be Bellona and Batz to round out the draft for European powerhouses. So very stacked front line. I'm a bit curious about where all these are going to end up going because they didn't draft a mage by the end of that under that draft, and it is going to be the Athena. It looks like that they're putting into the mid lane here with this composition. So very unique. Taco, talk to me a little bit about what they were trying to get from this.
This is a bold move going for the Athena in the mid lane, but I can see the concept behind it. Athena still able to provide some of that global speed rotation ability that Auzrik's going to have on the Janus, of course, and typically at the start of a match throughout the laning phases, if a Janus is using that through space and time, it'll be the jungler at most following behind them because you're normally seeing those rotations happen over into the dual lane. We don't see too much emphasis placed upon invades and solo right now in the Season 5 Summer Split. I think that most teams tend to focus on just shutting down those duos.
Well, they're going to make sure they need to set up in a big way for NeiI and for Woolvie here on this EU Powerhouse squad, because that's where the majority of their damage is going to come from. And that's not even really particularly early. I mean, Batz is very strong, but part of his strength is that Fear No Evil is such good disruption that the rest of your team can follow up very well. But this time, they don't quite have that same follow-up that you might expect. So we'll see how well they're able to put it in action. Meanwhile, Fable GG have a ton of damage and a ton of setup, and certainly will be able to provide it.
And that's my big concern here, looking at European Powerhouse's draft. Sure, you had the rotational ability that can be matched because of Eribiiax on the Athena, but where is that confirmation on the kill? I just don't really see that huge burst of mage damage coming forward from the Athena. At times you can see the hybrid builds working out, but I still don't think that it's going to match the damage that Auzrik can put in through the mid to late game. It's just Auzrik needing to make it to that point.
Well, already putting some pressure onto Auzrik, who's down to about half HP after he takes the dash to the face, but got to be careful. Waldrom is making a rotation. If the dash is committed again, could be in trouble, but NeiI is here as well. Overhand smash just to clear the wave. No real boxing just yet in the 2v2. In fact, they're going to head right back towards these left mid heartbeats.
It feels a bit like European Powerhouses are putting a lot of pressure onto Woolvie to really perform on this Artemis, because that's where the brunt of their damage has to come from. There's no other room for leeway in that department. I think that Woolvie is also fully aware of just how important of a role he has to play, which is why we see Keeman and Woolvie forfeiting the initial dual lane pressure and not really wanting to be at risk of getting picked out of position so early on. ChronicThe Bros and Davey, a lot of kill potential between these two.
Now, if they can get to the point where Woolvie does have his damage online, then it's pretty tough if you're Fable GG, right? Because you've got Bellona coming in, you've got Fear No Evil as the pull almost lands, you've got the taunts, the walls. I mean, there's a ton of setup for Woolvie, and he could certainly run a team fight, but they got to get to that point.
For me, ChronicThe Bros just has to be careful. On the Sylvanus, probably the most immobile target on his team. Everyone else with a fairly reliable escape option.
Yes.
And probably looking at the Sylvanus as the initial targeting point for European Powerhouses. I think that if you're going to try and shut anybody down, it'll definitely ride off the back of killing the Sylvanus over and over again.
Now, and that's interesting because I wouldn't even have suspected that EU Powerhouses would go for early aggression with this. It doesn't quite feel like that, but I mean, Guardians have high base damage. You can see it going to work here onto Auzrik in the mid lane, who is being forced back. So if they're gonna look for the aggression, then I agree. Sylvanus is one you can definitely punish when you're able to make big rotations or catch him out of position. He's so immobile, such an easy target to hit, and can be relatively easy to slow him down.
But I think that Fable were expecting Auzrik to lose his laning matchup against Eribiiax. Janus doesn't have a lot of pressure in the early game, and so to compensate for that, you've got ChronicThe Bros and Davey running the Sylvanus Xbalanque. That's not a lane that's going to lose the pressure, which means that Fable's buffs are going to remain in their favor, and they're going to remain uninvaded, and that's the big thing for me, is that if European Powerhouses wanted to separate themselves from Fable early on, they're probably looking at doing it around this mid lane, but with Sylvanus and Xbalanque, it's just so much more complicated.
And it's important that we talk about being able to secure those buffs, because sometimes you see them going over to the mid laners, especially early on here, but they've been going to the hunters the whole time. That's not entirely unheard of or anything like that, but it certainly shows that they're not expecting Auzrik to be throwing down in the mid lane against this Athena, as there is a little bit of action onto Kimon, who does still have the dash available, so he should be able to retreat. Ooh. Actually, Rising Jaguars right into the trap, and we'll be getting a couple of nice crits to get some damage out.
3 crits in a row.
It's nice.
All for 90 apiece, but now it's going to be Kimon getting Eribiiax, Defender of Olympus, ulted on him. Woolvie still giving chase. Davey going to purify out the taunt, but Kimon, he's going to find the kill alongside of Woolvie.
The second that they got that ultimate, they went in aggressive, but now Waldrom is here to try and settle the score. Finds a kill into Kimon. Woolvie dancing for his life, but can't dance enough. Actually has to use beads to get through the trap. Now Auzrik's here as well. Davey rejoins the fray. They want to find another kill in the duo lane, and they've got the damage.
Davey still trying to stay alive. Eribiiax can use the purification beads, but it's just a little bit too late. Auzrik able to finish that one off, and what looked like such a promising gank moment for European Powerhouses was immediately turned upon.
Fear No Evil comes in though, and now NeiI's able to find a kill. Davey does end up falling, and the beads have to come out from Auzrik to get him out. It ends up being a 2 for 3 overall. Again, European Powerhouses were the ones that started that aggression, Taco, as soon as they got Defender of Olympus online.
And it looked as though Davey had used the purification beads earlier in the lane. I think that was just a sprint being applied from ChronicThe Bros, trying to get his hunter out of danger, and a sacrifice is worth it in the end. I still think that that favors Fable just a little bit, but not necessarily favoring Davey. Davey would have had a better opportunity to farm up and get a little bit ahead of Woolvie had he not stuck around. I think he just stayed there for a little bit too long. Yeah,
he came back in to help secure that third kill, and then as soon as that kill was done, they've got to be wondering where NeiI is on the map. They haven't seen this Unbots in a long time. He's got to be in the jungle somewhere waiting for an opportunity, so just leave. You know, just get out of there, back, and enjoy your early lead. Now things still end up relatively even within the duo lane. In the mid lane, though, Auzrik is starting to build up a bit of an experience lead.
And that's the struggle that I think European Powerhouse is going to have for the duration of this match is, yes, can Eribiiax beat everybody to the punch? Maybe so, but the trick is making sure that everybody gets out alive. Killy here in a lot of danger now, using that Fatal Strike to try and run away, but I think he could be toast here.
Certainly is going to be toast. Eribiiax able to find that kill. Defender of Olympus, yet again, just putting the numbers in favor of European Powerhouses. And NeiI needed the help. He was in execute threshold underneath the tier 1 tower with not a whole lot of options, so the good rotation over does even up the kill count.
And Auzrik actually choosing not to rotate over. I think even if he'd used it through space and time to try and get Killy out of there, he most likely ends up falling still just because Eribiiax had the taunt and the dash available.
I think there was probably not much way that Auzrik could have helped that situation. Maybe you rotate over if you think you have kill potential, but NeiI was the only one low and had kind of stayed back in the tier 1 tower, so there really just wasn't an opportunity to even that one out. Instead, Auzrik just kind of pushes the tier 1. I think probably makes the right call there as NeiI comes up to look for the red buff invade, but it's not there. Sorry, NeiI.
Probably never going to be there either for NeiI. He's going to have to be really swift about that one. Probably end up 50-50 tossing it if he does manage to catch that red buff on its timer. More importantly, though, it's just that Eribiiax doesn't really get punished for rotating over to the solo lane. I know that Auzrik has a slight experience lead, but Janus is most likely going to be able to acquire this anyway. And
wow.
I say that because Janus just has so much more mobility during the laning phase as opposed to the Athena. You're able to just portal through walls, head to those back harpies, farm those up, then make it back to the wave still in time. You don't miss any of the creep wave. And those little differences, I think, are going to continue putting Auzrik just further and further ahead of Eribiiax.
We did a brief pause coming out here, but looks like we're just about ready to move right back into the game. That way you don't have to worry about missing out on any of the action. But as you point out, Auzrik is going to be trying to punish Eribiiax when he makes those rotations. And I don't know, I think the opportunity is there. I mean, we saw him get some damage onto the tower, have some waves pushed in as well. You don't lose as much as long as you're there for them when they die, even if they get hit by the tower. But I think there's some room for Auzrik to grab some buffs in the jungle while Eribiiax is rotating if he can't match that pressure. A lot of the times he can, so he has to make sure he looks for that, especially since they have Waldrom on the Rat. But if he can't, then I think he's been doing the right call to just try and strip some farm.
And speaking of pressure, Waldrom hovering this dual lane side. Not really sure if he's going to try and commit that through the Cosmos for an aggressive move here, but Seems like Neil's presence in the mid lane going to be enough to try and go for the contest on the right mid Harpies.
Waldrom looking at Eribiiax and NeiI here as they group up around these mid Harpies. There's not going to be much fight there, but look at Waldrom recognizing early on where the damage is going to be coming from. The Achilles is really the first item he picks up after just finishing off his Acorn there. And it's something that we see junglers pick up a lot, but I really like it here.
Based off of Eribiiax's build pattern, I think that this is the right choice for Waldrom. You've got the CDR boots and building into what I believe is going to be the Voice Stone. Speaking of which, you got Achilles getting ganked over in the solo lane with the assistance of NeiI. That's going to be a kill from NeiI.
NeiI able to find a much-needed kill there because Achilles, when it's just the 1v1, has been able to establish the pressure. We saw him push NeiI under tower earlier, but when NeiI makes the rotation, when Eribiiax come over, they're able to help this Bellona keep this matchup even. But now FableEU are looking to swarm into the jungle of EU Powerhouses, 4 members strong. Kimon dashes in aggressively, has Woolvie here for support, and Waldrom's low, has to dash away.
Waldrom going up into that air. Auzrik actually going to find the kill onto Woolvie, and it's all about Davey picking off Kimon. In the end, FableEU are able to invade European Powerhouses red buff.
Defender of Olympus not able to come out in time, and now FableEU can start looking for the Gold Fury. No one from EU Powerhouses are around. So yes, they were able to get the pick over in solo, but it looks like the jungle, the team fight, and the map objectives are going to be going the way of FableEU at 9 minutes 45 seconds. A Gold Fury added to their lead.
That did not look like the proper spot that Fable wanted to be in either. I think that Auzrik managed to connect with that through space and time, get a lot of poke damage against Woolvie and Kimon with the follow-up with the Unstable Vortex, and Waldrom, perfect bait there too, with him and ChronicThe bros, because ChronicThe is the one who ends up eating the Tusky from Artemis, and no one else is caught out in it because Waldrom's able to separate himself far enough away that the ult just ends up being a little bit wasted there.
I think that your read on that is the same read that EU Powerhouses had, because Kimon goes in aggressively with his dash root combination. Like, he's looking to fight there. And you had the same idea, right? That maybe FableEU didn't actually want that fight, and it was a bad one to be in, but Auzrik able to find some good damage there. They turn that fight back around, grab the Gold Fury for themselves, now have about 1,000 gold lead or so, right around that mark. So nothing too substantial, but remember, EU Powerhouses, I mean, are they working towards the same late game that Fable are with Double Guardian and Warrior on their team? I mean, it doesn't feel like that.
It might not feel like that. And
yo, get 2 ganks over to your lane and then you're spam taunting. I love it, you know? Yeah, feels good, doesn't it?
It's classic 2v1, but speaking of, Kimon actually going to dash in aggressively one more time. ChronicThe bros caught up in the Fear No Evil, could possibly get taunted out here by Eribiiax, and now it's all about Auzrik looking to connect where he can.
Now ChronicThe is still in a whole lot of trouble. Waldrom comes over, they land the slow. ChronicThe just barely makes out alive. Auzrik did clip NeiI on the back end, but MeowNate makes the rotation over and finds the last hit. ChronicThe does end up falling, and now Auzrik trapped in a bad spot, needs to find a portal as MeowNate's willing to dive.
That's what MeowNate really needs to be on the lookout for. I love the rotation that this Bellona goes for. It recognizes that not much action's happening in the solo lane. Let's go scavenge for some picks in the mid.
And is able to come find them. Talking about not much action there in the solo lane. Has about a level and a half lead, as now he's coming to come strip the blue buff away from Killy. Not gonna be able to take the buff itself, but now they're looking for the fight. Kimon here to help, but Killy, very confident, is able to survive in that 2v1 rotation and come right back to lane.
And see, this is 2 different build pathways for both of these solo laners. MeowNate with, I think, a little bit more of the aggressive option on the Mystical Mail, just doesn't have the same sort of regen capability as a Gladiator Shield. And Killy, with the Glad Shield online, can possibly box into this Mystical Mail, but those little ticks, I think, are just giving MeowNate the slightest advantage.
Stun doesn't land as they continue to box out here in the solo lane. 2-0-1 though for MeowNate, despite some of the struggles had early on. They've gotten MeowNate ahead of Killy on this Bellona, so she can start making more impactful rotations like we saw happen in Tier 1. Also ahead is NeiI on this Batz, 1-0-2. Been able to farm a little bit better than Waldrom, despite the 2-0-3 slash line for him as well. So they've got some leads on the jungle solo side, but it's mid-hunter that are ahead for Fable.
This feels a little bit more concerning, though, at least for the early game segment, if you're FableEU, because Killy, the whole purpose of going the Achilles in the first place is to have the undoubted solo laning pressure, and he just has not been able to accomplish that because of multiple ganks from NeiI. I think that was just great attentiveness from European Powerhouses to shut this Achilles down and keep him suppressed during the early game, so we don't see any of those rotations from Achilles.
ChronicThe again is going to be the target. Fear No Evil dropped, big crits coming out. Does have the Wrath of Terra to hit 3 members through space and time, creates an escape path. Auzrik going to look for the retreat as well, but Waldrom still looking for damage. They get their Hunter out of there with a great portal and can't find any kills.
ChronicThe bros are counting his lucky stars, and he manages to squeeze away from that one. Sylvanus, normally not going to go completely invisible in the middle of a team fight, but with those Janus portals, he just gets right on out of there, and there's no real follow-up from European Powerhouses because of it. That's the disengagement that you have to be concerned about for European Powerhouses later on. Early game, it's kind of just a toss-up as to who's going to walk out on top there.
Oh, we saw it is. ChronicThe was able to make it out, but Taco, I think you had a good point, and I want to go back to it, for about this solo lane, how usually you want your Achilles to certainly be able to get the lane pressure. That's why you pick him. He's so strong in this 1v1. But what's the trade that EU Powerhouses have had to make to take away that early lead from Fable GG? Well, Woolvie's a little bit behind Davey. Auzrik has been able to go unpressured here up against Eribiiax in the middle lane. So yes, they've been able to slow down Achilles, but they haven't been able to put pressure anywhere else, as ChronicThe takes a lot of poke in mid.
Auzrik trying to return some of it. ChronicThe bro is going to pull Eribiiax back in. That'll set up the portal nicely, but it's through the Cosmos from Waldrom, invested so early on, and I just don't think his team was on the same mental speed as him, and now everyone's just disengaging, but European Powerhouses might have spotted the Ratatoskr up in the air.
Yeah, if they saw that, then they have license to do exactly this and come into the jungle. NeiI, though, takes a lot of damage on the entry. Waldrom does get hit by the Fear No Evil, but jungler ult for jungler ult, and not much gained either way.
Yeah, they don't spot Eribiiax and NeiI hurling up behind them, and Auzrik, ChronicThe bros, Waldrom feeling comfortable with numbers, but that's just the deceiving front.
Eribiiax does go in for the taunt. Earth and Fury going to come out as well. ChronicThe looking for the retreat with sprint on him, but Auzrik comes in the back and chunks NeiI to force him back. NeiI wants to continue the chase underneath the tier 1 tower, but he's basically alone. ChronicThe again survives the gank, and now Achilles here, and he's putting pressure on NeiI. Can't find the fatal strike as it does get body blocked, but Davey comes in with the cleanup with the Rising Jaguar, and Achilles wants to keep pushing.
And Achilles popping the thorns, trying to play as aggressively as possible. Keeman's going to end up falling to ChronicThe bros now, and Achilles, he's not done just yet. He's going to stand there and laugh in the face of his enemies, but it might have been a little bit too soon.
Might indeed. He ends up getting taunted back in. The board comes out. Woolvie finds a kill for himself on the rotation over. So each hunter able to come over and clean up a kill. And my boy Achilles, you can't just stand there and taunt like that.
Take what you get and back off. There's zero reason to stick around. Just to what? Assert your dominance and die? That's not asserting your dominance. That's letting the enemy team walk all over you.
And ends up getting a free kill on that one, and now it's Eribiiax who's the one that's laughing, but it is no doubt that Achilles' rotation kept that fight from being a lot worse than it could have been as Gold Fury now started up. Fable GG have it to about half HP. Woolvie's here, but no boar. He just used it in the mid lane. Instead, they drop it. Davey starts looking for the auto attacks. Defender of Olympus forced out as well. They taunt back in ChronicThe, but Waldrom's here. Auzrik able to find the kill on the Woolvie as they continue to chase the Sylvanus, but Eribiiax overcommits and he falls as well.
Eribiiax tunnel vision so heavily against ChronicThe bros. Didn't even care about the rest of Fable collapsing on top of him. He just dashes forward aggressively anyway, and that's going to be a quick 2-for-0. At the very least, though, they were able to prevent Fable from securing that Gold Fury, and they stopped that pool of it. So in the end, I guess it kind of works for Woolvie and Eribiiax, but I'm sure that both of them would have much preferred to stay alive.
Yes, and in the end, they do end up dropping their lives. So they don't lose a big chunk all at once, but now there's freedom for Auzrik, freedom for Davey to farm and get farm that those two are not going to be grabbing. Eribiiax does have Defender of Olympus, or does not have it, so can't even be back sooner, rather, on the Athena, so he is going to end up paying the full price. But look at this build path. Voidstone, cooldown boots, Soul Reaver from Eribiiax. He's committed to this damage Athena.
I think the Soul Reaver is probably the only item so far in this build that I'm not completely sold on. The rest of it seems pretty true to Athena when you're trying to play her a little bit more aggressively. This is very similar to what you'd expect out of a jungle or even a solo Athena build. But the Soul Reaver is what I find to be so odd because there are so many different ways to proc that as an Athena unintentionally.
Yes, it's easy to not get that the way that you want it, as opposed to some other gods who can always guarantee they're getting, like Scylla kind of comes to mind. It's very easy to make sure it's just crushed that you're hitting people with for that big Soul Reaver damage. But Eribiiax, on the other hand, Could be dashing in and getting a proc there, and he might not want it on the dash, so has to make sure he gets the most out of it as a bit of a grouping's happening here in mid. 4 members from FableGG are right around this Gold Fury pit, but with Davey heading back to lane, I don't think they want to grab it just yet.
European Powerhouse is more focused on securing their red buff as opposed to looking for the fight, but FableGG have differences in mind. Waldrom going to end up eating that Soul Reaver proc and still going in aggressively is the rest of European Powerhouse. That's a quick pick for NeiI onto Waldrom.
Able to bring him down. They do have to commit the Fear No Evil onto it, but Waldrom takes a spill, and he uses beads towards the end of that. I'm not sure if they just came online or if he held them way too long, but either way, they were not there in time. Now ChronicThe has to drop Wrath of Terra in the mid lane. Kimon has the root, but Achilles, undeterred, able to fall back. Not able to get the stun onto ChronicThe. Auzrik creates a portal if they need it, but FableGG are in mid for now. Now it's Davey who has to jump away.
But it's all about European Powerhouses still having the 5v4 advantage. They're looking for this Gold Fury. They're setting up a position with the heals out of Kimon on this Terra. This could very likely be European Powerhouse's first real Gold Fury opportunity.
But what's their big secure? We're the ones with the mage are FableGG. The board does end up coming out to force everyone back. Meownade is low, but ChronicThe is the target. They can't keep up the chase. They turn towards Davey instead. Aegis gets him away, but NeiI is right there to follow up. Kimon's here as well. Davey has to look for the autos, and Eribiiax deletes him. Is able to find that kill and move back towards gold.
Davey doing everything in his power to buy his team some time. Achilles made the rotation, already found a quick couple of picks onto Woolvie, but now it's all about Waldrom taking out Kimon as well.
Taunt comes out. That's going to bring Auzrik back into the mid lane. Eribiiax, though, might be trapped in a bad part of town. Killy finds a second kill of this engagement. They're not done looking yet. Next target is going to be Meownade, the tanky Bellona from earlier, who does go up and right back down in the middle of everyone, looking for a bludgeon to return some kills, but it's just not going to be there. Meownade's going to fall here without getting anything in return.
Meownade, nowhere left to run. Probably would have been better off using that Eagles rally into the safety of his T1 tower, but still, I would not have been surprised if FableGG had chosen to dive him then and there. But one more time, it's European Powerhouses looking like they have the advantage, but they just take too long. And that is just the repercussions of not having the magical damage that you need to secure a Gold Fury. Otherwise, they have no issues taking that. You burst it down, you siege it, and then you back off.
Yeah, and can we see the player damage charts over here on the left-hand side, too? Because I want to, talk to them a little bit more about it. I'm a little bit surprised they go with the Batz with this composition. Not that he's not an insanely strong jungler, but with this much control already, why not go with a more bursty assassin in the jungle to sort of help mitigate that, too, especially with Athena mid?
Well, speaking of burst, Waldrom in a little bit of trouble here. Just looking to poke out NeiI and the Terra. Eribiiax actually almost dies in the process, but manages to escape. And Finch, I have to go right alongside that with you. It just doesn't feel like NeiI fits into this composition very well. I think that they picked the Batz because of that Fear No Evil and the heavy disturbance factors, but they still needed some better follow-up for it.
Now FableGG able to pull the Gold Fury away without any kind of contestation from EU Powerhouses. That scuffle you just alluded to, where Eribiiax is forced back, has kind of freed up that space for them to start aggressing onto that left-hand side of the map. Now they're up about 5,000 gold, as well as 5 kills this far into the map, 5,600 experience. This game was even for a while, but FableGG have been slowly pulling away from EU Powerhouses.
I think if European Powerhouses want to make it feel like they have a little bit more of that burst damage, they need to time their abilities around Kimon's Earth and Fury just a little bit better.
Sure.
I think we've been seeing that Earth and Fury come out very defensively as opposed to aggressively, and for European Powerhouse's current draft, initiation is key here. They have to just find the pick and then immediately back off, because the counter rotation capabilities from FableGG's current draft, I think, are just a little bit overwhelming.
Yeah, they're not going to have the sustained damage to match what Fable can do in a team fight, right? So when they initially go all in on that target, they need that target to die right away, and it needs to be because of all the control that they're able to bring and like the high base damage numbers here for Eribiiax to go along with this Soul Reaver Voidstone that he's built into so far. So they have the opportunity. Through Space and Time comes out from Auzrik. Doesn't hit home. That's a big ultimate on cooldown, but he's got Chronos pendant. He
was expecting the Fear No Evil, I bet.
Trying to get the CC immunity.
Maybe just a, but even then, I don't think that there's a necessity to use it through space and time. I think that because of the fact he has that Mage's Blessing upgraded and the Chronos pendant, pretty much 30% cooldown reduction, no real need to be all that concerned about how long this through space and time will be on cooldown.
And if that's his fear, then he's right that that's his only CC immune option. He doesn't have beads available right now. It's been on cooldown for a while, almost about to come back up. So if that is his fear, then that's the only way to do it, and it has to be preemptive. So if that's what he's worried about, then I understand where he's coming from there, but I just don't know that there was that much worry up.
Look at these Magai's cloak rushes, though, for European powerhouses. Eribiiax and NeiI both already rocking the Magai's. And I don't even think that it's necessarily a heavy CC for Fable, so much as it is that there's so little hard CC that a couple of Magai's cloaks is going to be great at preventing some of that counter initiation. Yeah,
it might seem counterintuitive, but sometimes if there's very little control, Magai's cloak is really strong, as now they're going to aggress onto Davey in the duo lane. It's going to be NeiI that's chasing him down, but they drop the Darkest of Nights in return. Aegis keeps him alive for the moment. Woolvie getting some nice crits through space and time. Comes through for the nice clip. Auzrik wants to continue chasing.
Not sure that they're going to be able to get close enough. Woolvie's Purification Beads, I think, preventing him from getting pulled, and now he's going to have to backpedal on the portal. Auzrik no longer wanted to tank it, but it's ChronicThe Bros who's in a lot of trouble here because the rest of European Powerhouses has made the rotation.
Davies in trouble now. Takes a lot of damage on the back end. Eribiiax finally finds the kill. Terra gets the knock up. Kimon drops Earth and Fury, but isn't enough Fury to save him there. Turn their attention now towards NeiI on the back line with the Scourge, along with Eribiiax, but they just don't have enough damage. Even with the Eagles rally, Fable GG can stand in this all day.
ChronicThe Bros is just so incredibly tanky. NeiI now realizing what's going on, tries to peel for his mid laner, but it's too little too late. Eribiiax is already falling to Waldrom.
NeiI looking for the retreat path. Unstable Vortex come through. This is much needed. The rotation here from NeiI coming on the backside to provide some crits. That does eventually bring down ChronicThe, the tanky Sylvanus, but Auzrik not done fighting just yet. Portal into the Unstable Vortex. Through space and time for damage! Deletes NeiI, but now he has no escape. NeiI ends up taking his life.
NeiI still trying to stay alive here, but it's just a little bit too much. Achilles and Waldrom combined managed to take down the Bellona, and I think that was an unofficial deicide.
Just very nearly. They are going to turn their attention back towards this Tier 1 tower as Kimon and Woolvie rejoin the fray. But Fable GG in a prolonged engagement. They do win it, but by the narrowest of margins, it feels like here. I mean, that fight was a lot closer than had any right to be. It felt like they kind of just overstayed their welcome.
They overstayed just a little bit, but Fable also really just stuck it to European powerhouses. I mean, European powerhouses are the ones who find a great late counter rotation to Fable's initial pressure, but then they end up still getting swarmed and controlled. And for a team that doesn't have very heavy amounts of CC, they certainly have enough damage to make up for it.
Yeah, Fable haven't really needed this too much CC, right? They're kind of just standing near you and doing their damage. So, I mean, they certainly have some tools like the knockup from Waldrom, and Achilles can land a stun and Chronic Wrath of Terra, but those aren't, I mean, it's just a few, they're not that great. Fable kind of are just near you in the fight and doing damage.
And Davey, for as early as he died, for Fable to still be dealing that much relevant damage is kind of problematic for European powerhouses. Speaking of which, Waldrom not going to be able to pull that Magai's cloak from Eribiiax, and the pull also won't connect from ChronicThe Bros. So Acorn Blast and that pull just left on cooldown for now. Seems like Fable still want to play aggressive, though. Waldrom's got to be careful not to have a repeat from earlier of getting picked off, however.
He's certainly in trouble of that happening. Woolvie spots him out. NeiI right here around the corner. Waldrom, though, still playing aggressive. He's trying to create some space for his team to grab this Gold Fury, but he will not keep Kimon out, who has Defender of Olympus channeled. That does force everyone back for the moment. Gold Fury has now been unleashed. Killy is the target for the moment. He retreats. NeiI, of course, is in the back line looking for damage, but can't find it. Both teams reset for the moment.
I think that's all Fable wanted to begin with, though, was pulling out an easy Defender of Olympus from Eribiiax. Now he won't have that from the team fight should one break out. Auzrik going to get rooted. Can initially go to the portal as Killy eats a crit from NeiI, but doesn't seem to mind.
Waldrom lands in the backside. He's looking for Kimon and Woolvie on the back end, who's been a target. Forces the ultimate out, does get the knock-up. Shell comes out right into a trap. Waldrom has to use Aegis, just barely gets away through space and time, creates a path for Auzrik to eventually come chase down the enemy hunter. Now Eribiiax going to be the target. No Defender of Olympus to get out of jail for free this time, even with the big knock-up. Fear no evil pushes everybody back, though, and NeiI finds a kill of his own.
They just can't protect the Hunter long enough. Davey gonna end up falling, but Auzrik still manages to find Eribiiax through the thick of it all. Now, Kimon and NeiI still trying to help shut down Killy and ChronicThe Bros. ChronicThe Bros getting a little bit separated here. All eyes onto NeiI, though, as Auzrik still giving chase to the monkey.
NeiI has to retreat. That means they're going to focus their attention squarely onto Kimon, who makes it back to the tier 1 tower. Fatal Strike executes him before he can even find the wall. Clap. Another kill for FableGG to take him up to 3 total in this fight. They can head back to Gold Fury if they so choose. Meownate's still on the map. Neil making his way there, so it might be contested.
That was a huge pick, though, for Fable to find at the very end of the team fight. Kimon needed to stay alive just to give some more presence for European Powerhouses to have a little bit of that contest factor going. Now with 3 members dead, it's all up to Meownate, and Waldrom's looking to zone him away.
Waldrom is trying to keep him away. Meownate doesn't have the ultimate. Fable, though, grabbed the Gold Fury, even hit Meownate with the through space and time to bring him low enough to where he has to retreat. Fable now pretty firmly in control of this game. European Powerhouses, wherever they were trying to go with this Athena pick so far, has not quite gotten them there.
It's like we've seen flashes of promise and like the sparks of life from the Athena pick. But overall, I'd have to say that this Athena has really fallen short so far in this first match between European Powerhouses and Fable. I think that a large issue is just the lack of burst damage. Athena can do nice CC and just keeping the engagements going, but I feel Eribiiax kind of recognizing that he's falling flat with the damage, gonna also pick up that Stone of Binding, maybe get a little bit more of that penetration online and going for his team.
It's so interesting, you know, he has two of these aura type items to try and boost the rest of the team's damage, but what's he boosting? I don't even know. He's the second leading damage dealer on his team as ChronicThe ends up getting chunked. Does have to fall back, has Killy here in supports, but I agree Athena has done some nice things because she's an Athena, and Athena's really, really good. But I don't know, I haven't seen anything that's made me think this is better than any mage.
Well, it's just because he's starting to build into the penetration now. I think I would have preferred to see Eribiiax with the penetration item earlier on, as Killian gonna get taunted back in, stunned out by the Terra walls, now rooted by Kimon one more time, but he hasn't taken enough damage to really care.
Kimon does get rooted, not gonna be able to continue to push forward our FableGG, but I don't know how much they even want to. They're coming back towards this Pyromancer and pulling that instead.
Another big thing I think is also lacking is that Woolvie is just getting so heavily controlled in a lot of these engagements. Waldrom has been all over him in terms of just disrupting this Artemis, knocking her up from that through the Cosmos, and Killy also just completely swarming her and chasing her down. One more time, it's going to be Waldrom connecting onto Woolvie. Both of his actives already burned out.
That's Aegis and Beads that have already come out, so he's very much going to be a key target for him here in the next fight. Now, they want to continue pushing forward through Neil, but instead he is going to be the target. Defender Olympus has to come out to save him. Woolvie does drop the board, trying to lock down Waldrom for the moment, but he escapes. Wrath of Terra knocked everybody up. Waldrom continues to be chased on the left-hand side. Has to use Aegis to keep himself alive for the moment, but Kimon not done trying to chase out the rat.
Speed buff might be good enough to keep him alive. No, instead it's going to be Eribiiax finding the pick with a dash off of the Athena. Finally, an engagement seems to be going in European Powerhouse's favor.
They want to continue pushing into the tier 1 tower. Eribiiax has been stunned. ChronicThe very far forward and does not have Wrath of Terra any longer, but Woolvie takes a ton of damage. Killy can't quite finish that one off, but Auzrik's looping around the backhand side, might be looking for an opportunity to come back in. Instead, it's going to be Killy continuing to chase.
I think if Killy had ran into the second Transgressor's Fate, he would have found the solo kill onto Woolvie with the thorns. If he pushed just a little bit further, both of those traps are right next to each other. The first trap, dot damage, but speaking of dot damage, it's a lot of burst damage against Kimon. Terra gonna end up falling one more time here to that through space and time, and now Fable. This has been the story all game long. European Powerhouses look great, but then the engagements just keep going and they keep going, and it's Fable who wind up coming out on top despite having lost Waldrom at the very start.
Dot damage over a really short time there with the ultimate, right? Just really quick, one quick.
Oh yeah, there's no dot there to be applied. It's just one giant chunk, and even for the Bellona, it's too much.
I'm with you though, man. Auzrik right in the face. It does not feel good with the Soul Gem, Soul Reaver, Ethereal Staff build. This proc build has become very popular at this point. That definitely causes problems even for the tanky Bellona, but they just don't have enough. They don't have enough damage when they come in with their initial wave EU Powerhouses. Yes, they may be able to bring one Waldrom very low or one ChronicThe very low, but even if they get the kill, it's such an overcommitment that they have to make that Fable have been able to relatively easily punish.
And I want to elaborate on that also, because Kimon and Meownate are supposed to be your frontlining factors here, but Auzrik's ultimate already taking massive chunks of health out of Kimon. I think being level 17 and trailing 3 levels behind the mid laner. It certainly doesn't help, but you're still a level 17 Terra. You'd expect to have a little bit more survivability than what we've seen from Keeman so far this match. I mean, he's got 7 deaths to his name. That's quite a lot for support.
To be fair, he hasn't committed a whole lot to magical defense in this build so far, has he? I mean, between the Emperor's Armor, Sovereignty, Lotus Crown, he has some, but not nearly as much as you might expect. As Achilles gets controlled and taked him down very early with Fear No Evil. Davey going to be the next target. Rising Jaguar for the escape, but NeiI blinks forward to try and chase him down. Davey's still alive, but Chronic is in a whole lot of trouble. Woolvie gets chunked very early on, but now Auzrik is down. 2 very important kills, but Waldrom comes and finds the Artemis on the backside.
That is probably the most important pick that could have possibly happened here for Fable, because they lost Auzrik and they lost Achilles. 2 huge components for their composition just already taken out in European Powerhouses. They're still going to try and pull this Fire Giant despite not having their Hunter, but I think they just wanted the fight.
They are trying to catch Chronic out, and they've done so far. He's low. Look for the escape on the backhand side, but NeiI is there, not going to allow it. Now Waldrom has to retreat. It's just him and Davey who are up for now. EU Powerhouses, even without Woolvie, are still posturing around this Fire Giant. Do they have the damage? Is a legitimate question. Do they have it?
Based off of what we're seeing, I think that NeiI has the damage, but Waldrom maybe looking to intercept. He still has a little bit longer to go before he's got that Through the Cosmos available again, but this isn't the swiftest Fire Giant of all time.
No, it's slow, isn't it? And very reliant on these crits coming out from NeiI to try and burst down quickly, but Waldrom doesn't appear to want to move in. I think that very slowly, EU Powerhouses have grabbed this Fire Giant. They just forced or zoned Waldrom and Davey too far back.
Waldrom just has to make a decision there. He spent way too long pussyfooting around the Fire Giant territory, and you just have to go in.
And that situation, he did not go in. Instead, kind of stuck around that weird nearby area, isn't able to find a way to move in and grab the kill or even contest the objective, at least get close. Now EU Powerhouses have the Fire Giant buff around themselves, and we turn ourselves towards the map on the structures, and there's still plenty of towers for them to grab to try and catch up this gold lead.
Fable, though, looking to respond with something out of nothing, and they will manage to strip away the Gold Fury from the map, but with the Fire Giant having been taken, that's probably the best that Fable's going to get. All these structures that are still left standing, 5 in total now for European Powerhouses to take, and that's a lot of gold if they manage to knock down every single one of these last standing towers for Fable.
That is going to be the call here from EU Powerhouse to try and close this gold gap here, Taco. We've talked a lot about how they don't quite have the burst damage that they need. They managed to make it work for them in that last fight. What was the key difference for him in that fight compared to some of these other ones?
Fable just being split apart from each other and not actually grouped up for the 5v5. It started off with Achilles getting picked for being overextended shortly after. ChronicThe Bros and Davey lined up, pickings for the takings, and European Powerhouses are taking everything they can get.
Davey already forced to use Rising Jaguar to retreat. Killy again controlled by the Fear No Evil through space and time, a little bit off the mark. Now Waldrom gonna come in, try and find a target. Defender of Olympus keeps Woolvie alive so he can move in aggressively. ChronicThe Bros taunted back in, and there's that Artemis damage we were alluding to earlier. Chronic falls, Eribiiax gets that last hit. 5 members of Fable still here, only 3 standing for Fable. GG. European Powerhouses are now knocking on the door of a Phoenix.
And Davey's still alive, but for how much longer? He doesn't have his purification beats. One time from Eribiiax would be all it takes to knock him down. As Auzrik finds some nice burst damage in the backside against Woolvie, but they can't take out this Artemis.
Artemis still standing very comfortably in the backhand. NeiI is low, so Waldrom comes in, is able to take down the Moon bots, but mid-Phoenix falls, and Meowth able to keep up the pressure. Woolvie finds Auzrik and Davey forced back into the Titan room. Now with Waldrom and Davey both still here, EU Powerhouses can't go aggressive any further, but there's still two towers to go grab. Taco, this Athena mid lane, this tanky composition, it appears to be working so far.
I think it's just because Woolvie's finally had a chance to participate. Beforehand, we saw Woolvie getting picked time and time again before he could really have any serious involvement for these team fights, and now that Fable GG are struggling to knock out this Artemis, that's the burst damage that European Powerhouses had placed so much pressure on to be available in the mid to late game stage. And it's not like Fable haven't been trying to find Woolvie in the back lane. They've invested so much, so many different times here, but Woolvie's had his actives almost every time. And then once they're burned out, Kima and Eribiiax immediately looking to peel for their Artemis.
And there's been a couple of fights here, Taco, to talk about how they can't quite get to the back line, where Auzrik has hit some through space in times that maybe you're not supposed to hit, or you don't always 100% guarantee that you don't go into a fight thinking you're going to get a bunch of damage from the through space in time every time. These last few fights, though, that damage has not been there. Auzrik hasn't been able to hit anybody with them, and that's okay. You don't always look for it for damage, but he's not using the portals for spacing to try and help his team leave throughout the fight. So if you all in for damage and don't hit, then you're missing a lot from this Fable GT.
This has felt like a purely aggressive Janus gameplay, too, from Auzrik, because we've only ever really seen those through space and times being used as an engaging factor. Speaking of which, Auzrik going to end up losing his purification beads because of NeiI. With that Fear No Evil, Eribiiax also investing in Defender of Olympus, but I just don't want to see Fable trying to make another T2 tower stand. We already saw that ended up last time. They're better off probably just playing around their Phoenixes.
Well, this time, EU Powerhouses don't have the Fire Giant buff to try and help them out, as Kimon does get stunned underneath the Tier 2. Meow Knight here to tank for him. Woolvie here to put damage in. Pull not going to land, as everyone for EU Powerhouses now group up for another push.
But this Sylvanus that worked out so well for Fable GG's early game is just falling apart in the late. ChronicThe bros cannot survive. Waldrom up into the air and that through the Cosmos, probably looking for Woolvie, is going to connect, but he's just going to eat the board and straight to the face.
The board comes down for CC immunity, taunted back in. Waldrom nowhere to go. NeiI gets the damage necessary to find the kill. Davey low in the backside. NeiI yet again comes in for an overhand smash, doesn't get it done, as Killy finds a kill with that fatal strike. Now he has to try and escape, but he's low. The slow comes out. Woolvie right here with a couple more shots and does eventually bring him down.
And that's going to be another kill there as Kima manages to find Davey. Now Eribiiax ulting in onto the rest of his team, trying to find a distance where he can. And it's not looking good for ChronicThe bros. This tree is about to get chopped down. No, cancel that. Blink over the wall. Never mind. Okay, Eribiiax is trolling.
The Eribiiax comes back in and does chase him down. Now, Taco, it's a lone Auzrik. No, Taco, there's no one here to defend EU Powerhouses. The Athena mid from Eribiiax ready to move in and take game one over Fable GG. 19 seconds on the closest person, and EU Powerhouses are going to take game one over Fable GG.
For a little bit there, I kind of forgot that Eribiiax even had the blink to begin with. I think we saw him utilize it maybe twice that game. But in both moments where he chose to use it, they ended up finding massive team wins, and that one right there spells the end of it for Fable. I think that was just really well brought back by European Powerhouses.
It really was. And Fable, I think towards that mid-game, weren't able to capitalize on the compositional advantages we talked about, because we said very early on that if you get to the late game and you have that much control, then this Artemis is going to be able to do whatever she wants and do tons of damage. And that's exactly what ends up happening in the late game. But it's kind of because Fable GG let them get to that point.
I think it's mostly the fact that Fable GG just kept consistently getting picked. That they weren't playing as a team. They did such a great job during the early game segments. And then suddenly, once the real team fights start breaking out over the big boy objectives, they're nowhere to be found. They're all just like spread apart from each other. And because they're spread so thin, no one's able to respond in time. And then it's just a series of the dominoes effect, I like to call it, where you see one pick happen, then another two picks, and it just keeps going, and it never really seemed to stop.
And we talked about it, right? That they had enough damage to maybe bring one Waldrom down, maybe enough to get one ChronicThe bros early on in engagement. Well, if that's the only person there, one Killy who's too far forward, then it's okay that's all the damage that they have, right? Because they just have to kill that one person, and that's what we see them doing in those fights. They'll get their picks, they're able to fall back, they're able to get a little bit of sustain off, and then reinitiate. They have Terra control, they have the Athena taunt, they have the Woolvie damage, they have Boar and Fear No Evil. They had a ton of control tools, and eventually they were just too strong.
Artemis turn and burn also, I think, really hit hard there at the end, because Waldrom, for as many times as we saw him try to commit that through the Cosmos, for even just throwing Woolvie out of position, completely useless. He was just crit and destroyed the moment that he touched the ground, and I think that was also just really well played by Kima and Eribiiax, making sure that they could drop whatever CC was necessary to keep the Artemis alive.
And you definitely saw that adjustment from Woolvie at a certain point in the game where he goes, okay, they're just going to dive me.
Yes.
Then no matter what, I'm ready to be CC. I'm either dropping my ultimate, I'm beads and Aegusing, whatever it takes to live through that initiation, I'm going to live through it and get my damage off. And once Woolvie made that adjustment, they were able to take the game pretty easy.
And, well, I want to see the adjustments happen now for Fable if they're looking to come back in this set and push this to some bonus might in that game 3. I think that they can't allow the Athena or the Artemis to go through. They've got to take away one or the other.
Let's see what it is.